There was no mustard on him. There was no hot dog in him. You know, he just played the game the way it was supposed to be played, and those baseball fans that came out to watch appreciated it. And he was a very popular player. But no, I didn't. And then, but in the visitors dugout, we certainly had more African American players than in the home dugout. I know the athletics that it was interesting hearing your story about Birmingham and worrying about the team. Those 3 years they couldn't decide whether to be in Mobile or Birmingham, and I now know why. But that was Charlie Finley's team, and you remember how aggressive and progressive Charlie Finley was in that era, and the athletics had a number of black players. Blue Moon Odom is some, and they had some Hispanic players, Burt Campaneris and some of the others that came through there. But I don't remember, race was not an issue inside the fences. It was baseball.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting.
Yeah, John, you mentioned a couple of names, but can you give us some more names of some of the famous players that you got to meet that were on the other teams?
Well, most of them came, you know, the A's, you know, became, you know, a dominant baseball team, and they all came up through the A's farm system. And yeah, I've got Joe Rudy's broken bat somewhere in storage or something, and Sal Bando played third base for him. Campaneris was at short. Jim Catfish Hunter pitched. Blue Moon Odom, who was from Macon, Georgia, came through the athletics, and you know, but of course the Yankee Ball Club had, help me, Ricky, you know, Steve Whitaker and Mike Hegan and Dooley Womack and Stan Bonson and Fritz Peterson, and you know, I should have made a list before I came out, but there were a lot of great players that came. Mike Ferrara, oh, and you know that Ronnie Boyer, Clete Boyer's brother, who never really made it, but played third base one year. So we had some great players, and they were all good folks. I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was probably some of the best years of my life. I mean, think about it. A 12-year-old boy down there playing, loved baseball, and you know, being surrounded by future major leaguers. I mean, how good could he get? You know, so.
Yeah, I'm going to direct this next question over to Richard. Now, you talked about it before where you said, you know, you never really saw people from Columbus really taunting the other team and things like that. And I think it brings up a very interesting dynamic that, you know, businesses here are most certainly taking advantage of Confederate phrasing and iconography to further their business. And I think that's important when you think about the city as a whole and civic pride as far as what the team owners, what the city is willing to support, what they're willing to do to keep a team. Now, Richard, over the many years that you've been a sports writer here in Columbus, can you talk a little bit about the importance of professional sports in cities and really what a baseball team meant to the town here, especially since we don't have one now?
Well, I was noticing on one of your screens there, where you had all the different businesses, WRBL was on there, and I was reminded that WRBL was sometimes called We Rebel. B. Ed Johnson, the mayor who went to the Yankee Stadium to try to get the franchise, worked for WRBL. So, I mean, you had that a conflict there, perhaps, of you know, the rebel TV station, the mayor, Jim Woodruff, the owner, and then the Yankees. That just somehow, I'm not sure that all fit together in the minds of local people at the time, but sports franchises have been, you know, important. I mean, you can look at the history of the professional teams in Atlanta. They've been over backwards to get the Braves to leave Milwaukee, and then the Falcons and the Hawks followed them. But through the years in Atlanta and here, I could have probably made a living off of one topic, and I did it in various ways in both cities. History of black athletes in the South was one label. I did that in Atlanta, and I remember talking to Hank Aaron for the story, and he later, this was alluded to in one of his many biographies that have been written about him, but he was playing for Jacksonville, and he said the worst towns he had to come to were Macon and Columbus. and he specifically in one of the books talked about he had a lady friend here who lived in Phoenix City, and he would leave Golden Park and go to see her and then walk back to whatever hotel they were staying in. And he ended up going across the 14th Street Bridge in probably the fastest he had ever run, getting after a gang of folks who were after him. But someone who should be on this panel and he's not able to do it is Speck Richardson. Speck grew up here, went to Jordan High School, was a manager of their athletic teams there, state championship basketball team. And he and Cecil Darby were classmates, and they both got jobs with I suppose it was the Columbus Redbirds. And Speck went on became a major league general manager, but one of the stops he made was in Jacksonville. And they were Jacksonville Redcaps or something like that, but they were a farm club of the Boston Braves. And they trained in Waycross, Georgia, and Speck tells the story about the management of the Braves in Boston bringing the Jacksonville folks together and saying, we're going to integrate. We've got some players in mind, and started looking them over. And he said didn't take brain surgery. He said, Aaron, we'd like Hank Aaron. Well, they said, well, we're not going to send him there by himself, so they sent a player named Felix Mantilla, who was a black Latin player. Well, then the Boston club said, well, we're sending a third player with him. His name was Horace Garner. And Horace Garner was, I don't know, 6'4", 220. He was the enforcer. He was sent with them to look after young Aaron and Mantilla because he had been around the Negro Leagues and other things. And in Macon, they had to, Garner had to go in the stands to protect someone was coming after Aaron or Mantilla won. So these things were very common, and this is in 1952, I suppose. So it wasn't too long before, 10 years, I guess, before all these incidents here. But, I mean, that was all of these things, the dynamics that you're talking about here in Columbus are no different than all of these other cities. Fast forward to when the Atlanta Hawks moved it from St. Louis to Atlanta. Their star player, one of their star players was Lenny Wilkins, who declined to come with the club. He had heard too many things about the Deep South, right or wrong. And of course, it's ironic that later on he came to coach the Hawks. But these things happen in every southern city. And if you look back to the Robinson years, they happened in Montreal, they happened in all of the cities that he had to play in the International League. So race was an obstacle for all of these cities to get these franchises and keep them. And so and I'm not sure it's gone away today in many cases.
So I'm going to build off the question that I asked you, and I'm going to direct this over to Glenn. Now, I asked you about the importance of a professional team here in Columbus and what it really meant to the town over your career. I understand, Glenn, that you've been pursuing getting another team here, at least what the options are of having a team. And I think the story of the Columbus Confederate Yankees is really the story of what cities have to go through with their civic pride to get a team, and then what it takes to keep it and what it means to lose a team. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like going out there and at least exploring the options of getting a team back?
I will. I'd be glad to. I would like to start by just sharing a couple things for some of you that don't know. This is kind of a. This is a
First of all,
real.
tell them who you are.
Well, I'm Glenn Davis. I'm Glenn Davis.
What'd you do?
I'm a former Major League All-Star and played 18 plus years in the big leagues and throughout the world.
How many Grand Slam home runs?
Well, I think I hold that record, Richard. You would bring that up. I hold that record actually in the big leagues as the